All right, everyone. Very warm welcome. So this is the third part in the series, right? Grade 9, wherein we were, of course, discussing the Russian Revolution, and up until now we have had a conversation in two parts. Where in the first part, of course, we discussed the general nature of the European society when all these revolutions were happening. We saw the role of the French Revolution. We discussed who the liberals were, who the radicals were, who the conservatives were, what was their political philosophy, what was their ideology. Then we further moved on to how the Industrial Revolution sort of brought about a radical change in the lives of the people of Europe during the 18th and the 19th centuries. And even though it made a certain section of the people really prosperous, but then there were majority of them who were really oppressed and who perhaps did not have that kind of luxury which the clergy and the nobility and all of these people did. They did not have access to basic resources. They had long working hours. They were not really allowed to take part in the decision making processes and were subjected by capitalist structures, subjected to torture by capitalist structures, in a sense, right? So now we also sort of understood how socialism came into the picture, right? Socialism came as this god saving, life saving theory, rather, which said that socialism is a philosophy which is against private property. It will ensure that all the laborers, all the workers get their due rights, and everyone will work towards promoting the collective social good, so on, so forth, right? Now, in this particular session today, we would be dealing with how socialism really came into the picture and what was the support for the political philosophy of socialism way back in the 18th and the 19th centuries, right? So, if you remember, the last time we had this discussion, we realized that socialism emerged as one of the leading political philosophies in the 19th century. Yes, and I'm talking about mid 19th century actually. Leading political philosophy. I'm just going to note this down. In the mid 19th century. Yes, this is something that we've discussed before. This is not something that is entirely new, so to speak, right? And you would also realize that we discussed three of the leading political thinkers, socialist political thinkers of that time. We discussed about the philosophy of Robert Owen, who was a British socialist who believed in the idea of cooperatives. We discussed the philosophy of Louis Blanc, who was a French socialist, right, and entirely opposed to the French government's faith in capitalist structures. And last but not the least, we of course discussed our good old bearded friend Karl Marx, who propounded the theory of Marxism, right, who basically said that the industrial society innately is capitalist in nature. It has this tendency to exploit the workers in order to maximize profit. And his basic philosophy was that the workers had to come together, form a union, so to speak, and reconstruct the society in along socialist lines, wherein all the property was not privately owned; it was socially owned properties, right? Basically, private property had to be abolished. Karl Marx hated the very idea that an individual could possess private property with themselves, essentially speaking, right? So we discussed the philosophy of these three gentlemen. Now, if you realize what is happening in Europe at this point of time, what is happening in Europe is basically left, right, and center. It is bleeding all of its colonies, right? It is usurping resources and it is pumping it back into its own nations, be it Germany, be it France, be it Britain. And industries are being developed, industrialization is happening, so on and so forth. And because of that, there is greater inequality in the society at this point of time, right? So socialism is emerging as a top contender which promises good for the workers, right? So it's becoming really popular. So what is happening now is that socialists across Europe, they end up forming a international organization. Okay, they end up forming an international organization, which I believe was called the Second International. All right, which I believe was called the Second International. Right. What was the purpose of the Second International? This international organization which the socialists form. The purpose behind this was, I'm going to write it over here as well. The purpose behind finding this organization essentially was to set up funds, all right, to collect funds across Europe and in fact across the globe, and that is why the name was Second International. They basically set up this fund to help fellow socialists, okay, to help fellow socialists in their times of distress, right? In their times of distress, and yes, essentially handing out monetary aid to socialists around the globe so that they can plan and they can execute revolutions to overthrow the existing regime, right? So that is the entire purpose of socialism: overthrowing the existing regime, abolishing private property, right, and setting up an egalitarian society, strictly speaking. Yes. So they basically wanted to set up funds to help fellow socialists, bhai, behan, vagera, right, in their times of distress, right? Cool. So not just that, across the globe, okay, across the globe, multiple organizations, multiple socialist organizations, okay, socialist word is very important, right? So multiple socialist organizations started mushrooming, all right. And if I was to give you an example, in fact, look at the critical role, okay. It's very important to understand what sort of role were these organizations playing. It was not just about the monetary aid. ठीक है, पैसे दे रहे हैं, that is a different thing, that is separate. Of course they are helping fellow socialists out, but of course what other thing they were doing is that they were helping socialist political parties, all right. They were helping socialist political parties to win elections, all right. They were helping socialist political parties to win elections, right. If I was to give you an example, of course this may not directly concern us, but one of the key examples of how they won or how they helped socialist political parties to win elections was in Germany, all right. Germany, where many of such organizations got together and helped the Socialist Democratic Party, all right, SDP, Socialist Democratic Party in Germany, okay. They helped them win the elections and helped them form the government in Germany, right. So you see, it's not a small thing helping a political party win elections. There's a lot of money involved, there's a lot of manpower involved, there's a lot of muscle power involved, right. So they essentially help socialist parties win elections, right. And such was the influence, okay, such was the influence of socialism that by 1905, okay, date is not that important, although you can remember it if you want to, but if you're not good with dates, that's completely alright. The concept is what is more important to remember. Okay, so by 1905, something radical had happened, okay. There were socialist parties for the first time ever, all right, first time ever, पहली बार जिंदगी में, okay, first time ever, socialist parties were set up in England, which you probably, if you follow British politics, you will know them as the Labour Party. Alright, you will know them as the Labour Party. It is the same party which finally granted independence to India in 1947, when Clement Attlee was the Prime Minister. Right. And then of course that is just extra information. And then we have a socialist party that is being set up in France. So you can see the wave of socialism had started taking over the entire Europe. And this is well before it touched Russia, okay? We will deal with a man called Lenin later on, and we will be studying about what his philosophy was in life. But right now you can see that there is a wave of socialism that is sweeping Europe left, right, front, center, because the workers are really agitated and they want to rebel. Period. That is how it is working. Okay. Cool. Although there was this attempt to bring in socialistic principles in governance, but still, to a very great extent, all right, to a very large extent, majority of the governments, okay, majority of the governments were formed by the liberals. Okay, majority of the governments were formed by the liberals, who, if you remember, were hardcore capitalists. Okay, they were in favor of private property, they were in favor of independent enterprise, they essentially loved corporates, right? Corporates which were fleecing the workers, which were denying them rights, and essentially they were modern day MNCs. Okay, the ones that you see today are the corporates that I'm talking about. Okay, so basically liberals were capitalists, and if you essentially consider a modern day corporate as well, most of the employees who work in such corporations are very heavily paid, right? But if you actually visit the factory and if you see the plight of the workers, it is sad. So the same concept remains relevant in 2021 as well. Okay, so that is how we could perhaps make sense out of it. Okay, so it was socialism still was confined to the working class. It was not something that was necessarily accepted by the aristocracy or the corporates or even the liberals, right? So majority of the governments were still being formed by capitalist minded people. Fair enough. So this is the backdrop. Okay, this is the backdrop of essentially the Russian Revolution, firstly, because it is very important to understand the context in which Europe was operating, and then further on we would go on to understand what exactly triggered the Russian Revolution, what was happening in Russia at this point of time, and how can we compare it to the rest of Europe. But that we're going to do in another session perhaps later on. And until then, please take care, stay safe, maintain social distancing, and have a good day ahead. Thank you so much.